Thank you for downloading the latest podcast from the Canada-Europe Transatlantic Dialogue housed at Carleton University in Ottawa. The interviewees were in conversation with Anca Gurzu. For terms of use, please refer to the publication section of our website, www.canada-europe-dialogue.ca.
Hello, I'm Russell Dalton. I'm a professor of political science at the University of California, Irvine, and do research on public opinion in Western democracies.
Could you please tell us how salient environmental issues are among political parties in the European Union today, but also if you compare it with the last decade or so?
Well, the answer varies a great deal by parties. The striking thing is, and not surprising, Green parties pay a lot of attention to environmental issues. The surprising thing is that all the other parties give minor lip service to the environment. So it doesn't matter much if you're a Social Democratic Party, a Christian Democratic Party, or a Communist Party. They put it way down on their priority list.
Have you noticed any kind of difference in your research between Western Europe and Eastern Europe in terms of the weight that environmental issues carry?
It would probably be the same ranking as what I just gave, that it's more salient to the Green parties in East Europe, although those are fewer and have smaller support than the West. And it's the same clustering of other parties all lower and together, but overall, East European parties place much less attention to environmental issues than the West parties.
Would you know why that is the case?
Part of it is that they have so many other issues they're trying to deal with, of economic development, democratization, rebuilding national institutions, a weak environmental movement. Part of the argument is that environmentalism has grown in the West as it's become affluent and been able to implement these new policies, and East Europeans want to get affluent first and clean up the environment second.
We were talking about the Green parties as well, and obviously their main concern is indeed environmental issues. Have you seen any kind of changes in their platform throughout the years? Do you think these Green parties can have a real shot at influencing environmental policies if they do not perhaps pay attention to other policies as well?
Well, Green parties have changed over, let's say, the last 20 years in a number of ways. In many European countries, they've entered the government at least for a time, and that's forced them to deal with the responsibilities of government so that they can advocate policies in the opposition, but when they actually implement them, it causes them to be more constrained. They've also had to broaden their focus more on other kinds of issues than just the environment. And that is, to some extent, diluted their environmental attention. But in most instances, I think their biggest impact has been to be the vanguard of raising environmental issues and keeping other parties attuned to it. Even if they don't enact policies, they're the ones who keep it on the agenda, because otherwise it might fade away if you don't have a strong advocate, like in Canada with the Green Party compared to the United States without an active Green Party. You have somebody keeping it in the election debate. So I think there's a lot of activity that comes separate from policy making.
And lastly, what about the voters? Do the voters and the political parties share the same views on the environment on a general basis?
That's an interesting question, and I think there's lots of reasons why we would think not, because voters have many things that they're concerned about. The environmental issue in the last several years especially. What's striking from our research, at least to me, is how well voters and parties find each other who have a common view. So that voters who are negative about the environment, who have a more conservative view of the environment, find a party that represents them. Voters who, in party systems that have options, find parties that favor the environment. So what we found was a relatively close fit between the position of voters in a party on the environment and the positions of the parties on the environment. But again, back to your earlier question, the more voter choices people really had, the fit would even be better. But I think the process works where people are using environmental issues now as a factor to shape how they vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.